there's the record. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Want to welcome you to our this week's episode of Ask the Doctor. Today we're going to be working or discussing brain health and how it affects you. What are the things that you can do to improve it? So, Dr. Jeremy, if you would, I probably should give you another second to get that swallow of water down. But if you would, go ahead and take it away and share with us all your wealth of knowledge tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna, for having me. My name is Dr. Jeremy Thornton. I am a chiropractic physician and internist and clinical nutritionist practicing functional medicine for 23 plus years out of Missouri. I primarily work with autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions, diabetes, hormone imbalance, things like that. After experiencing in my family members cognitive degenerative type conditions, I had a special place in my heart for Alzheimer's disease. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, well, we're going to talk a lot about neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease. And there's other things, right? There's other types of dementia that are out there. But everything we talk about tonight can be related to other types of dementia, can be related to just overall brain health. And so it's going to be some good information I think you'll find valuable. And so guys, if you're just hopping on and I don't know you, type where you're tuning in from. And if there's somebody in your family that has experienced Alzheimer's, I'd like to know what relation to you that has experienced Alzheimer's. It's heartbreaking to lose a loved one, especially to watch them slowly decline. My grandfather was one that I experienced it with, and he was such a strong, healthy man. And to see him lose his brain, and then it took years for the rest of his body to finally decline, right? But he was gone long before his body finally gave up. And it was just heartbreaking to see such a strong man deteriorate like that. Let me see if I can pull up my screen. All right. Right, Anna, can you see my screen? Awesome.
Yes, I can. Perfect.
All right, so dementia is a general term, right? It can mean all kinds of different cognitive challenges dealing with memory. Alzheimer's is a specific disease process, and of course contains dementia, but is a specific set of underlying causes and a specific set of symptoms that's a disease by itself. And there's other types of dementia. So let me move y'all's pretty faces out of the way here so I can see my screen. So this is prevalence here in the US. And this was 2020 numbers, 5.8 million in the US with Alzheimer's. This is a breakdown by years. 1 in 10 age 65 and older. So 10% age 65 and older right now in the US have Alzheimer's. I think that's staggering. Between 65 and 74, 3%, 17%, 75 to 84 years old, 32% are experiencing Alzheimer's 85 and older. That is a lot of folks, and I think that's so sad. And this one shows where we're at now. Let me move again part of the screen here. So we're at 5.8 million right now. This is what's projected 2030, 2040, 2050. If we still see the increases that we're seeing right now in Alzheimer's. And this is largely because our baby boomers are aging, right? And this is a large segment of our population all aging at the same time, right? And so we see these staggering numbers increase to 13.8 million expected Alzheimer's levels by 2050. Percentages, this is lifetime risk. So if you're 45 now and you're male, there's a 10% chance that you will develop Alzheimer's in your lifetime, 19.5 for females. If you're 65, it just goes up just slightly there, the lifetime risk of developing Alzheimer's disease.
Can I ask, why is it higher in women versus men?
Well, there's a number of theories. I don't think there's a clear answer on that. Part of it has to do with imbalances with estrogen and progesterone, and high estrogen levels in females over time, causing part of that. Another theory is related to possible toxicities with what we're going to talk about in a little bit, aluminum. And one of the major routes of aluminum toxicity in people is antiperspirant, right?
Yeah.
And so what do ladies do in the shower? They shave, right? And then they apply their antiperspirant, right?
Okay.
And guess where that aluminum in the antiperspirant grows? Right into their body, and that finds its way to the brain.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit more about causes. That's a good question, Anna. And if anything else pops up, guys, either drop it in the chat. We have a small enough crowd, you can just interrupt me if something comes to mind. So this is disease by the numbers. One of the startling things is this is the number of years that you could possibly have Alzheimer's before symptoms begin. 20 years. That's staggering that people don't realize they're having onset of Alzheimer's 20 years prior to symptoms beginning. Oops, somebody joined. All right, so here's this is the picture of a drawing of a healthy brain versus advanced Alzheimer's. Part of this is the cortex that shrivels up and damaging areas involved in thinking, planning, remembering. We have shrinkage, especially severe in the hippocampus, an area of the cortex that plays a key role in the formation of new memories. You see these little tiny here, these little fluid-filled ventricles here, how much larger they become with Alzheimer's. This is a PET scan of a normal brain, mild cognitive impairment, and Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to talk about just a few root causes. There's a lot of potential underlying causes with Alzheimer's, but there's a few that are really standing out, right? And when we talk about root causes, we're talking about things that lead somebody down the path of Alzheimer's, right? It's not like it's some contagious disease where if you're around somebody that has dementia, you're going to catch it, right? There has to be some underlying health issues that are predisposing us to this condition. Now, there could be some, there's arguably some genetic tendencies, but I always say that genetics could load the gun, but it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger, right? Just because we have that in our genetics does not mean that we have to succumb to that ourselves. And so root causes we're going to talk about tonight, one is blood sugar imbalances, one is leaky gut, leaky brain, and then we mentioned briefly already is aluminum and its role in Alzheimer's disease. So when we talk about blood sugar imbalance, they're starting to call Alzheimer's in many circles, calling it type 3 diabetes, right? So everybody has heard of type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, but they're calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes, and the brain is literally on fire, the inflammation in the brain. And the reason they're calling it that is because if you have diabetes that have an average blood glucose level of 190, for example, they have a 40% higher risk of dementia than diabetics with an average blood glucose level of 160. Type 1 diabetics have higher rates of brain lesions and slower cognitive function than people without type 1 diabetes. If anybody experiences an episode of extremely low blood sugar or hypoglycemia, it was associated with a twofold increase in the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So So hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, the brain is kind of starving for fuel, right? If you think about it that way, the brain is the largest consumer of sugar of any organ in our body by far. And when the sugar levels aren't plentiful, the brain ain't happy, right? And like they say, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. So the brain ain't happy, nothing else in the body's happy. And so the brain will actually open up that blood-brain barrier to try to get as much nutrients and as much sugar it can up into there for fuel in the cases of hypoglycemia, and kind of because it's starving for fuel, right? And then the process, by opening up that blood-brain barrier, it's also allowing other toxins and potential chemicals and microbial agents and different things that could also come through that blood-brain barrier and cause damage. Hyperglycemia is even worse. The high blood sugar damages the endothelial lining of those blood vessels in the brain and the blood-brain barrier, and allows oxidative damage of the brain, and allows, again, increased permeability in that blood-brain barrier, and allow things to come through there that causes neuroinflammation. And as a result of that stress and trauma on that blood-brain barrier, can actually cause deficiencies in nutrients, especially magnesium, which can further aggravate that condition, especially in relation to vascular conditions affecting the brain. So leaky gut equals leaky brain. We've done a whole series on leaky gut, so I encourage you. We don't have the time to cover this in great detail tonight, but we have a whole segment on leaky gut, and we can certainly get you the recording for that, because I think that that's an important potential underlying cause of cognitive challenges and of neurodegenerative conditions. It starts with the gut. And so here's, without getting into a whole lot of leaky gut information, whoops, I will skip it all together. How about that? So these cells right here are what look like in the gut. If we were just to kind of take a cross section, we cut through the gut, we looked at it from the side. Right through here is where the food goes, right through here. And these are the individual cells that line that gut lining, right? These little villi here are where we absorb our nutrients, those things that stick up like this. They call this area between the cells tight junctions right here. You see these right here? These are tight junctions, and they're tight for a reason, right? We don't want just anything, any old thing floating through between these cells and getting into the bloodstream, which is down here. So we get stress to the gut, and that can come in the shape of, for example, gluten or gliadin can be very stressful on that intestinal lining. There can be infections. There can be prescription medications, for example, NSAIDs and steroids, and overuse of antibiotics and chronic stress. These things start to cause an increase of a protein they call zonulin. And this zonulin protein actually triggers these tight junctions to open. Okay, it signals for there to have an opening of this tight junctions. And the more irritation, the more damage, the more the zonulin increases, and we start to see more and more of this this opening these tight junctions. And then this, like this says up here, we have pathogens and toxins, bacterial lipopolysaccharides and inflammatory cytokines that start to come through here. And as you see these little villi that look like this up here, suddenly they get chewed up, right? See what it looks like down here? This is advanced leaky gut, okay? And now we have all of these junctions that are open. Things are pouring through this permeability, increased permeability in the gut, and causing inflammation, immune response, immune dysfunction, and some of these things are getting into the bloodstream. Well, if they get into the bloodstream, guess where they can go? Okay. And what I think is very interesting is these cells of the blood-brain barrier, what do they look an awful lot like? They look an awful lot like these cells up here, right? And if you notice, there's another similarity in these cells is they also have tight junctions. These tight junctions are also triggered or affected by that same protein we talked about in the gut called zonulin. And if zonulin levels are high in the gut and we have all that inflammation and tissue damage, it gets into the bloodstream, that zonulin makes its way up into the brain. Guess what happens to the tight junctions in our blood-brain barrier? They start to open up, right? And now these same things that we talked about in the gut start to come through that blood-brain barrier into the brain, causing continued immune response, damage to these microglia and the astrocytes, and causing inflammation, free radical damage and stress, and ultimately triggering neuroinflammation. And it's that chronic neuroinflammation that they're finding is in all causes or all cases of Alzheimer's and chronic or neurodegenerative conditions. So again, if you haven't seen that Leaky Gut series, I encourage you to reach out to who invited you and take a look at it. That's as deep as I will go into it tonight, but it's, again, if we have to take our gut seriously because of its impact on our health ultimately, and even our brain. They say that the gut is the second brain, right? And that the gut secretes more serotonin than our brain does. And so the gut is so important for our immune system, for cognitive function, for mood, and so much more. So we talked briefly about aluminum earlier when Anna asked about female increased incidence. And the studies are starting to suggest that there's an association between aluminum exposure and Alzheimer's disease. Growing body of evidence that aluminum contributes to the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease. They're finding aluminum is co-located in these tau proteins presented as the tangles within the neuron. So in the Alzheimer's disease, they see this tau protein causing these what they call neurofibrillary tangles, and plaque in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. And they're finding co-located within this buildups of aluminum. So this is some sources of aluminum toxicity. I mentioned one that's really sneaky is antiperspirant. And so if it says antiperspirant, most of the time you can guarantee it's aluminum. 9 out of 10 times there's aluminum in that antiperspirant. If it says just deodorant, it doesn't say antiperspirant, there's a possibility that it doesn't have that aluminum in there, but I encourage you to look for it. Read closely the ingredients and use something that's a little more on the natural side that does not have that added aluminum in there. Aluminum pots and pans, canned goods, canned soda, aluminum foil. There's even, we found traces in municipal water supplies. Vaccines have aluminum. Baking powder has aluminum. Look for aluminum-free baking powder. Cosmetics can contain aluminum. So we can have exposure, low levels of exposure over many years, right? And that aluminum can get up into the brain, especially if we have the leaky gut, right? We have the leaky gut causing the leaky brain. We're exposing our body to this aluminum, which easily gets through the blood-brain barrier and into our brain. So we're going to talk about some action steps to improve brain health, to decrease possibility of developing Alzheimer's disease or other neurodegenerative conditions, or just improving cognitive function in general. We'll talk a little bit after this slide about anti-inflammatory nutrition, but that's important. We have to reverse blood sugar dysfunction. And this is the thing that I encourage everybody to do, is to get your blood sugar checked, get your A1C number checked, get your fasting insulin number checked, because most people that have prediabetes don't even know it, right? 1 in 3 people has prediabetes currently in the US. I think it's 1 in 10, 1 in 11 has full-blown diabetes. And so the people, if we can catch this blood sugar imbalance before it gets to that point, we're going to greatly protect our brain and the damage that high blood sugar and high insulin has on our brain. So I encourage you to get those numbers checked, and then at least annually keep an eye on those numbers to make sure that you're keeping your body out of that insulin resistance and pre-diabetes and diabetes. Reducing stress is so important. Chronic stress is known to cause inflammation in the body, cause inflammation in the brain. Improving sleep, of course, is where our body repairs and regenerates and restores. Reducing toxins of all kind, food, cleaning products, hygiene products, especially those antiperspirants, right? Plastics. Supplementing with omega-3s is a great thing for the brain. As Americans, we don't get enough good quality fish, especially here in Missouri. Can I get an amen? And so it's good for us to supplement those omega-3s. Intermittent fasting has many benefits for the brain and brain health and longevity. Optimizing vitamin D levels. Studies suggest optimum blood levels between 50 and 70 are good things to shoot for. Supporting a healthy gut, right? Both with dietary choices. A good probiotic is a good idea to support the gut, reduce incidence or likelihood of leaky gut situations, and move your body. The brain is greatly impacted, and our cognitive function is greatly impacted by our physical strength, by our movement and our motion, and staying active is crucial for brain health. These are some top inflammatory foods. Make sure that you're getting a lot of these foods in your diet. Grass, pasture-fed meat, poultry, wild game, lemon, limes, berries, avocados, green tea, non-starchy vegetables, turmeric. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Wild-caught fish, bone broth, apple cider vinegar, ginger, extra virgin olive oil, fermented vegetables, coconut oil, coconut butter, coconut milk, and these lovely herbs here. Pro-inflammatory foods are our refined grains, our whole grains, our grain flour, our deep fried processed foods, of course, our fast foods, our soda pop, our commercial salad dressings and fake fats and vegetable oils and trans fats. These things are pro-inflammatory foods. So no matter what source you read or what different theories of underlying triggers or causes of Alzheimer's disease, I think Alzheimer's disease is multifaceted, right? I believe that there's not a single thing that causes it. I think it's multiple things that lead us down that pathway. But what I do promise you is that part of the damage that occurs in Alzheimer's disease is inflammation. It's related to inflammation in the brain, and that's not disputed. Targeting early, this is from Medical News Today, targeting early brain inflammation may slow down Alzheimer's disease. This is actually a thermography of the brain. Look at the inflammation in the elderly and then the Alzheimer's brain versus a healthy young brain, right? So remember that earlier slide, the brain was on fire and they called it type 3 diabetes. And the brain literally is on fire. And degenerating. What they're finding is the brain, just like the cells, we hear about the cells becoming insulin resistant, right? And what that means is the cells, because of sugar and things that rapidly convert to sugar, causing the blood sugar to go up, our pancreas gets alarmed and puts the insulin out there, right? That opens this, it has the key to open the cell to get the sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cell. Then our cells use that sugar to make energy. But we tend to drive that mechanism way too hard, right? We're too much sugar, too many grains, too many starches, too many simple carbohydrates, and our sugar's going up and the pancreas is secreting insulin. And over time, the cells, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. The cells are like, oh, whoopee, more insulin, big deal. And so they start becoming resistant to that insulin. And that's where they get that term insulin resistance. So the insulin becomes less and less efficient. And eventually that blood sugar starts to climb regardless of the insulin level. And then that's when we started to getting into those pre-diabetes and diabetes levels. Well, that happens in the brain cells as well. And when the brain cells start getting insulin resistant, it has to have fuel or those brain cells will die. And so when we get extreme insulin resistance in the brain and we're not able, the insulin no longer, is able to get the sugar into the brain to feed those brain cells literally starve and die. And that's why they call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. And so we're going to talk about some research, some pretty exciting research on curcumin and its ability, and we talked about turmeric in that slide about anti-inflammatory foods. That what I often call it the medicinal component or the therapeutic component of turmeric is called curcumin. And there's loads of research on curcumin and brain health, on curcumin and cognitive function, on curcumin and neurodegenerative conditions, and even specifically on Alzheimer's disease. And this was just a few that I picked off of PubMed. This one talks about the effects of curcumin on cognition in Alzheimer's disease. I'm getting ahead of myself. Curcumin and Alzheimer's disease, examining the potential clinical value of curcumin in the prevention and diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And here it's talking about how this curcumin can decrease that amyloid plaque buildup which is associated with Alzheimer's disease. Here, mechanisms of action of curcumin in Alzheimer's disease, different journal article, Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. This is from 2017. And I won't go into what all of this means, but just trust me that all of these things are very good when we're dealing with Alzheimer's disease. Curcumin inhibits the formation and promotes the disaggregation of amyloid plaques, right? The plaque buildup. It inhibits it and it promotes the disaggregation so it cannot build up in the brain. It attenuates the hyperphosphorylation of tau proteins, enhances its clearance, it binds copper, it lowers cholesterol, it modifies microglial activity, it inhibits acetylcholinesterase, it mediates the insulin signaling pathway, and is an antioxidant. In conclusion, curcumin has the potential to be more efficacious than any current treatments. And they stout that because there's curcumin impacts Alzheimer's disease in so many multiple different pathways in different ways that there's nothing out there that even comes close to what curcumin could do to impact the many different facets of Alzheimer's disease. I find it interesting that this is where a lot of times people struggle. However, its usefulness as a therapeutic agent may be hindered by its low bioavailability, right? And this is where we struggle with curcumin, is that in and of itself, curcumin and turmeric are a lipid-like substance, an oily-like substance, and we're trying to get a lipid-like substance into the bloodstream that's mostly water, right? Which is a challenge in and of itself. And so this is why a lot of the early studies on curcumin in all kinds of disease processes were finding huge success in lab models, right? And in the Petri dish studies and the cell cultures, right? In the test tubes and in the animal models where they could put the curcumin right inside and see what all it could do. But then when they would try to translate that into human studies, giving them curcumin in a supplement form, they weren't seeing the same benefits, right? They weren't seeing the same exciting things happen. And the reason is that curcumin has poor bioavailability. It is rapidly metabolized. It is rapidly broken down and is rapidly excreted by the body. So most curcumin put into the body, less than 10% is even absorbed, first of all. And then of what is absorbed, we might be able to measure small amounts in the bloodstream for at the maximum 3 hours, okay? And then it's gone, it's not detectable anymore. And some supplements, it's not detected at all at any time. And so this has been a big challenge, right? Because if it's gone in 3 hours, that's not a therapeutic effect on the body, right? You're not going to be able to impact something as serious of a health condition as some of these with a minimal amount in the bloodstream for up to 3 hours. And so that's why we're excited about a new technology that has come out of Germany called BioMS. And BioMS is a patented technology. They call it a nanotechnology. So basically they isolate the curcumin components out of the turmeric, right? That's one of the 3 parts of this technology. And then they wrap those curcumin particles in what they call a micelle. And a micelle is able to carry curcumin anywhere in the body, easily carries it in the bloodstream. It can easily carry it in fat, oil, water, any of those. So it essentially makes a fat substance water soluble, right? Which has never been seen before. And the other part of the technology that they call the nanotechnology is they shrink these particle sizes down to less than 30 nanometers. Well, a human hair, if you take out a human hair, is 100,000 nanometers in size. Okay, you'd have to slice that 100,000 times to get a single nanometer. That's how small of particle sizes that we're talking about here. And so when you get a particle size that small, this can easily get into the bloodstream. It can easily, with this micelle, get through the bloodstream and into the cells. And it can also, one thing that's super exciting about this is it can easily get to the brain, right? And as we're talking about all the anti-inflammatory benefits of curcumin, and we're also talking about all of the impacts of neuroinflammation, and that's why this makes sense and is so exciting. So this is what this nanotechnology looks like. Little bottle looks like this, right? And up to 277 times more bioavailable than native turmeric or standard curcumin products. And I can tell you from experience now, after several months of being able to utilize this in practice, it's the most powerful natural supplement that I've seen easily by far. And being able to see people's health radically change has been super exciting. I wanted to bring it up tonight because it's I think such an amazing healing tool with all kinds of chronic inflammatory conditions, chronic degenerative conditions, and Alzheimer's disease easily falls into that. So anyway, I've babbled on now. I want to turn it over to Anna and see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeremy, for sharing with us. That was, once again, an amazing presentation, letting us know exactly what's going on in our brain and what we can do to help. I was looking through the comments right now. We don't have a lot of questions. Anybody have questions? It's your time to ask.
I don't have a question. I just want to tell you that every time I get on, I always learn something new and different. And clearly I retain more every time I get on here, but as always, extremely interesting information. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
It's like our Thursday night health education class. I have learned a lot myself. I think probably when you do that leaky gut one, that one, it just like, I've heard that term for forever, but whenever I saw that picture and saw how the junctures, it was like, man, it clicked in my brain. I'm kind of from Missouri too. I got to see it, show me the pictures, show me the money, show me the pictures. So.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
Might I be able to grab a couple of your slides to use for a presentation at my office?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, message me, remind me, because I'll forget.
Yeah, that was so good. I was just like, I invited so many people that I was just really hoping would be on. So maybe they'll catch a replay, but.
Yes.
Yeah, I find we get a lot of people that we can send the link to. And so we'll definitely get that out to everybody. There's so many people that need to hear this message. And it's a message of hope, right?
Yes.
And I had asked Anna if she would share a testimonial about this technology. Do you have that on you, Anna?
I do. I printed it up because it is kind of a long testimony, and I knew that I probably, since we're talking about brain health, I probably couldn't remember it all, since it wasn't my personal experience. Just being honest, I'm over 50, so those type of things happen. I guess my junctures aren't as tight as they used to be. So I am going to, I'm going to read part of this, if it's all right. This person, she's on, she works with us, and this was about one of her customers. She said, if you have a loved one that suffers from Alzheimer's, I just have to share this. I've been working full time with a lady with middle stages Alzheimer's since October. Some days I just want to cry. It's such a heartbreaking disease. A typical day goes something like this. Although she's been staying with her son for 2.5 years, she tries to pack to go home multiple times a day. Sometimes we have the same conversations all day long. And when I give her answers, the very next thing out of her mouth is the exact same question. She gets lost in her own house, doesn't know that she has a bedroom, tries to go downstairs through the back door. She's so sweet and has such a great personality. It just breaks my heart to see her watch Fox News all day long and not be able to motivate her for much else. But about 5 weeks ago, a friend of mine approached me with some really high concentration turmeric oil drops that she had read about and thought it might be able to help my sweet lady. After a month of giving her a dose each morning, I noticed that she had better energy. Her son said she was even sleeping better. Her mood swings were almost non-existent. She still wanted to pack, but she's not able to remember that she still lives. She still has not been able to remember that she lives there. Had difficulty seeing things right in front of her, no memory to speak of unless it had to do with her family many, many years ago. She gets confused about ordinary items. She tries to use the back of her phone as a mirror, puts mascara on her lips. I even do that some days. No, I'm joking. Puts on her makeup all over itself multiple times a day. Can't find her toothbrush on the side of the sink. Often tries to put her clothes inside out or backwards. This week, however, I doubled her dosage, and I swear I have a different lady. I'm amazed all day long at the things she remembered. If you are still reading this, I'm going to give you a specific example of what happened today. This morning, she remembered I love to dance, and she asked me if I cut my hair, which I did, but I don't think she's ever seen or recognized me before. LOL. Most days she asks me, where's that lady who comes to clean or the other lady that comes to cook? It's all me. On her own today, she remembered that I don't drink and that Bob Hope shows up on this episode of Golden Girls. The second time I told her an item in her bag was her mascara, she said, oh yeah, you just told me that. It had to have been 15 minutes, but that's huge all by itself. When she took her bath this afternoon, she asked if we could listen to music. This was the first time she's ever shown any interest. She put her clothes on correctly, found her toothbrush on her own, and actually remembered to brush her teeth without being prompted. I didn't even feel like she had Alzheimer's today. Later, she was looking for paper towels, and they were on their side, hiding behind the drying pots and pans. Normally, she would have never seen those, but she got to, laid them down, walked away, and then she said, oh, I just got a couple of paper towels, but I left them over there on the counter. I've never known her once in 6 months to remember where she put anything. And while we had a great time at exercise class, when her son came home after work, she remembered that we'd went to the senior center, and there was a black man at the end of the class that was there for cleaning. And what a great personality he had. All day long, I just kept being surprised and amazed by the things that she was remembering. Anyway, I have absolutely nothing to sell. I just know that this disease is straight from the pit of hell. And if anyone wants to try these turmeric drops for your loved one, send the person who sent you here a message. You know, it's stories like this that makes me know why we do what we do. And sometimes it's brain health. Sometimes it's seeing somebody being able to move their joints again. But I feel like we're truly hope brokers. There's a reason why we do what we do. And so if you have a loved one, I remember whenever I was going through college in the summertime, I stayed with a lady who had Alzheimer's. And what I wouldn't have done for these, because we rehashed the same stories 1,000 times. We, in the middle of summer in Kansas, again, like when it's 110 degrees, we sat by the fireplace with the gas fireplace cranked all the way up. And as I was reading this, I kind of remembered those days when I stayed with Ethel. And, it was kind of a hell. Something I felt so bad. So far, I've been very blessed. None of my grandparents, they all had other issues and I haven't experienced this personally in my family. But if you know somebody, share this recording with them. and let them know that there is hope. And thank you again, Dr. Jeremy, for explaining all this. If you have more to say, please share.
No, I'm good. If you haven't experienced this technology, I would encourage you to reach out to whoever shared this video to you and try it. It's of course amazing for brain health, but so much more than that. And we also have an amazing group full of other testimonials of other health conditions that I think you would find valuable. Again, reach out to the person that shared this with you and ask them to invite you to that group. So I appreciate you, Anna, for having me, and appreciate everybody for showing up.
I appreciate you for always showing up. You make it happen. Sometimes when you show up like at 9:31, I'm sweating a big bullet because nobody wants to come hear me talk. I don't know what to say. I could read stories. But thank you all for coming tonight, and be blessed. And I'll try to have this together for you tomorrow to share with your friends and family.
Bye, guys.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.